And again, more songs of a true white brother. Okay, so we now explored a little bit how the human biography as it unfolds on the earth finds itself drawn to shared communities of meaning. And because each of us is completely individual, the varieties of these shared communities of meaning are huge. And the world conceptions that we have, whether they're thoughtful or not, are important to us. We need to have these world conceptions and the wide variety of them to accommodate our need for these different shared communities of meaning, and in accord with the karma that we have incurred over the past lives that we've lived. And we're drawn into special relationships in order to work at healing what we might call the wounds of these karmic relationships. And it's a very beautiful thing, for example, to be able to observe certain circumstances where this stuff works itself out. Let's focus on a particular thing of which there's a lot of general understanding in American culture, in part because the elements of these things have become major aspects of drama and television and movies and also in novels. And this has to do with alcoholism and addiction, and with the foundation, the coming into existence of Alcoholics Anonymous, and ultimately all the variety of 12-step programs, which in each case represent shared communities of meaning. People are drawn into these shared communities of meaning because there's something in them, and then we're going to wander up next to the mystery of evil again, but there's something in a human being which they're not exactly proud of. They live a life and they are drawn into some kind of excess. And this excess we call alcoholism or addiction or overeating. It doesn't make much difference, whether you're into too much sex or too much shopping. The fact is we have a difficulty controlling our appetites. And this is one of the things that's a hallmark of a certain advanced stage, in a kind of way, in our biographies, of development of our immortal spirit, where it starts to face the shadow elements in its own nature, these dark appetites and stuff. Now, of course, there's complex situation about where the appetites live in our psychology and how we describe that, but nonetheless, if we look at Alcoholics Anonymous, if we look at the various kinds of things that have gone on as a result of that impulse coming into the world, we will find that there are people who identify with this and find themselves drawn into this. And in these situations, we can realize that you have people with a karma of wounds that they share with each other. So you have, for example, you have a family which has alcoholics in it, and there's a tendency within a family with alcoholics in it for this alcoholism to pass through the generations. So you could have someone who's a child of an alcoholic and who has siblings who are alcoholics, who has managed themselves to not succumb to alcoholism, but nevertheless has certain tendencies in their psychology. And they have these relationships with their father and their mother and their siblings and the other relatives, which are important to them. And they seek to realize something in this situation where they are, by the nature of the dynamism of this shared community of wounds, to heal their karma with each other. This whole situation becomes a possibility in which karma can be healed and wounds can be healed and a certain kind of progress made. Now, because inserted into the structure of the world is human freedom, and of course that's another thing that butts up against the situation of the mystery of evil, but human freedom is something that we generally recognize and which we are drawn to ourselves. We want to be free. We have a strong desire to self-determine what goes on in our own existence. And of course you can do a survey of the world and you can just ask that question, how much individual freedom there is everywhere, and you can find all variety of degrees of freedom and problems of freedom everywhere over the whole world. And if you look at it from within individual biographies, instead of just from the outside based on our own antipathies and sympathies, our own likes and dislikes, you get to two entirely different points of view. You remember I discussed about the transition from thinking about to thinking with. When we look at things from the outside, when we, for example, look at the Muslim world and we decide that the way they treat women is wrong, or the world conceptions they have in relationship to the Islamic religion is wrong, and they do all these unjustified things. Well, they really do things we don't like, and that's our response then, is to create an argument as to justifies our not liking them. But if we step past that, antipathy, and start to use our imaginative faculty, our picture faculty, to think with them and to actually think in a very concrete and exact fashion about the biography of an individual which lives within that particular community of karma and community of shared meaning, you will find, again, these universal human characteristics. People are members of families. People have loves and attachments within these sets of relationships. These are very important to those individuals. It's an extraordinary thing when you begin to look at the world this way and to recognize that everywhere in the world there is this incredible amount of universal characteristics to the human biography, yet which contain this capacity for completely enfolding and enveloping with love and wisdom surrounding it, this individual immortal spirit and what it needs as an individual to experience. And so the whole world, in a kind of way, could be seen as this huge orchestra of individual biographies, and there's a way in which we can look at it and see its cacophonious nature, its disharmonies, or there's a way we can look at it and see the harmonies. And of course, we don't like the wars. We don't like the violence. We don't like all kinds of things. The terrorist doesn't like the violence. This is one of the issues that we came up with when we went through the 9/11 process, which we haven't completely digested, in which every time there's another seeming act of terrorism on an airplane in the United States of America, we run away with our thinking and get kind of stupid. We think that the world shouldn't be the way this is. This terrorist shouldn't be the way that it is. But if you go into where these young men come from to their lives, whether they come out of Palestine, for example, where they're oppressed by the Israelis, or whether they come out of Yemen, where they raised in a biography of ignorance, and the mullahs who train them and send them out as suicide bombers have their own agendas, and they use the fact that people all over the world are a bit upset with the West. The industrial West has marched through the world with its impulses of greed and left ruin and debris behind. We go into places in the world and we steal their minerals. We steal their natural resources. We steal their food. The United States of America has, I don't know, something like 40% of the things of the world sucked toward us. And we're surprised when the parts of the world where we take this from resent us. Get a life. Get a break. Think with these other individuals, and then you'll start to understand the dynamism of the world and some of the elements of it that really need to be thought about carefully. More later.